This is Everybody Pulls the Tarp with your host, Andrew Moses. Each week, Andrew talks with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets.
My guest is Washington Commanders running back Austin Ekeler.
Every day we write a page of our life. The best thing is you have the pen in your hand.
Three-time Olympic gold medalist Tessa Virtue. Welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
Thanks for thinking of me, and I'm a big fan of the podcast and of yours. So anytime you text or call, I'm here.
Mike Mills from REM.
The key to that was realizing at some point fairly early on that this was probably our life's work.
Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas.
My guest is 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, Stephanie White.
The hardest thing for a coach is trying to prioritize how much time you put in one area or another.
Former MLB player, coach, and manager Clint Hurdle.
That is the best title of any podcast out there in America, and the content matches up to it. Andrew, you do a fantastic job. I'm a big fan. Keep up the great work.
World-renowned organizing expert Shira Gill.
You can improve your life simply by removing things.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people.
Let's go. Hey everyone, it's Andrew, and welcome back to episode 2 in season 15 of Everybody Pulls the Tarp. On today's episode, we are welcoming back someone who has been a guest here on Everybody Pulls the Tarp once before. In fact, my last conversation with this guest back in 2023 has become one of the most listened to episodes of all time in the history of this podcast. And in today's conversation, we're going to dive even deeper than we did the last time. Today's guest is one of the world's most prominent voices in interior design, and she is widely regarded as one of the home industry's leading innovators and pioneers. Now, before we go any further, I just want to say this. If you've been listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp for a while now, welcome back. And if you are a new listener, I just want to take a moment to say how glad I am that you found the show and officially welcome you to the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family. I hope you'll hit that follow button right now in whatever podcast app you're listening to, and join me each week so we all can learn from the world's top performers together. Okay, let's get to it. Today, I am joined by Shea McGee. Shea is the Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of Studio McGee, where she leads the creative direction for all facets of the Studio McGee Inc. portfolio of brands, which includes the interior design arm, Studio McGee, and McGee Co., which is the company's product side. Shea launched Studio McGee back in 2014, but in many ways, her journey to launching Studio McGee began years before, when she left her job at an ad agency to manage the remodel of her and her husband Sid's first California home. Shea documented every step of the process on social media and became one of the early online influencers in the home design industry. She attracted a loyal following thanks to her unique design aesthetic and approachable style. And at a time when most interior designers were not sharing their tips and tricks with the public like so many do today, Shea was a pioneer and shared products, design tips, how-tos, and glimpses behind the scenes. Her early success online led to the launch of her own interior design firm, Studio McGee. And from there, the design business grew rapidly and paved the way for the launch of the company's e-commerce brand, McGee Co., as well as a long-running show on Netflix called Dream Home Makeover, which starred Shea and her husband Sid. Shea is also the author of 3 books, including her latest book, Around the Table, which was released back in April. Around the Table is a cookbook, but in reality, so much more. It's filled with recipes and inspiration on hosting, entertaining, and bringing people together. In our first conversation on the podcast back in 2023, Shea and I explored her remarkable story and many of her success secrets. Our latest conversation, which you are about to hear, is an even deeper dive into Shea's journey, how she does her work, and how the Studio McGee business has grown and evolved over the years. Shea and I covered a ton of ground in our conversation, and we dove deep into her creative process, where she goes for inspiration, how she develops ideas, how she manages her time, how she's evolved as a leader and entrepreneur, and so much more. This conversation is filled with inspiration and powerful ideas that apply far beyond interior design. There is something in this episode for everyone, and I hope you take away as much from Shea as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Shea McGee. Welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, Shea McGee.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Shea, I am so glad that you're back here on Everybody Pulls the Tarp. I am excited to reconnect and catch up on everything that you have going on. So where I want to begin is one of your newer projects, your email newsletter, which you call Love Shea. It's on Substack, and you launched the email newsletter earlier this year. Shea, I have to say, when I first saw that you were doing this, I was so excited. I immediately subscribed. I was in. So now I am curious. In that first email newsletter, which you titled Returning to My Roots, there was something you said right out of the gates that really struck me and caught my attention. Here's what you said, Shea. Quote, "After a decade of my focus being pulled between the business of creating beauty and the beauty of being in business, I found myself longing for a return to my roots. I missed the simpler times when it was just me and my computer speaking directly to an audience." End quote. Now, Shea, take me back to that moment you had that realization that you wanted to add this new creative outlet to your life. Was it a realization you came to over a period of time, or did it sort of hit you relatively quickly?
Sure. So I think that it was both over time and then maybe a moment of realization. And when you are the founder and the spokesperson and face of a company, you have two things that kind of have to work together, but also have some tension between them. And that is, I personally am not scalable, but in order to scale my business, we have to scale me and my voice and my vision. And that's across our design teams, our marketing, and really our entire brand is a scaled version from products. I need people to be able to visualize how I envision things to come to life. Once I give that initial kickoff direction, then they've got to run with it, but they're also representing me in a way. And that means that there are more and more layers between me and then the end result of what goes out publicly. And in many ways, that is a beautiful and amazing thing. And my team is really great at doing that. But it also means that all the things that I was doing when I first started my business that I really genuinely loved are no longer mine to hold on a day-to-day basis. And one of those things is our blog. And at the beginning, I was like designing houses, doing the social media content, writing our blog, and then eventually leading product development. And that was great, but I couldn't do all of that long term, and I couldn't really do it well. And I have been able to hire amazing experts to come in and lead teams that execute on my vision. But then I've missed that. I've missed that no filter between what I'm thinking and then the end result. And we had to kind of make some decisions like, well, do I take back over all of the social media? Well, I can't manage all of that. There's too much to manage. So I realized that I think Substack is going to be my way to have a little bit more of like an essay format. It was just the perfect platform. It's both visual, but it's also very personal. And that seemed like this aha moment of like, okay, this is going to be my touch point where there's no in between what I'm thinking and then what gets pushed live. And we have obviously grown a brand that has a polished perspective, but sometimes there's place for some lack of polish. And that's what I wanted this space to be.
How do you decide what ideas you want to explore in this particular forum, what you're going to share, how you're going to share it. How far in advance do the ideas come? I'm imagining there's not a huge content calendar for Love Shea. It's a little bit more organic.
No, and it's the same reason I started a personal Instagram account, because it was like kind of odd when I was popping in and we'd be debuting these amazing projects on Studio McGee, and then it's like me like jumping on a trampoline with my kids or something. It was just like, it was like, okay, we got to kind of like parse out like the focuses of these channels. And no, I don't have a content calendar. I have a list on my phone that I keep of ideas that pop into my head. And right now it's early, so it's kind of experimental. I'm just throwing things out there and then I'll see what people respond to, because I actually don't really know what people want from me on Substack yet, because I've only been doing it for 2 months. And so it's been fascinating, because the post that people went crazy for is like what it's really like to work with your husband. And I kind of expected when I was going into it that people would be more focused on taste making and trends, but they are interested in that, but they're like extra interested in my personal life and what it's like behind the scenes.
You talked about the email. It was in mid-March on the Substack about working with your spouse and your relationship with Sid. This was really transparent and it hit me deeply too. And as you mentioned, it resonated with so many around the world. Here, I'm going to quote from a couple things that you said in here, and I want to dig into all of these a little bit. So the first was, you said, our strengths don't just complement each other. They are almost perfectly opposite. I speak the language of business and I understand it, but the weeds of finance, operations, management, technology, that's not where I live. I would drown there. Sid doesn't just survive there, he thrives. I can't quite imagine this working if we were both designers. The fact that we aren't is maybe our whole secret. So talk to me about that. Like when you think back to you and Sid's working relationship, how quickly did you identify that was the case?
I would say day one, the reason we started working together was because he identified like, oh, you're drowning in operations in your design business. And so I've told this story many times, but he looked at my desktop and it was like, I just saved everything to my desktop. Like it was like hundreds of screenshots and just like how a creative thinks. Like, I'm like, oh, I'll save those for later. I need to put them on a mood board. And he was like, oh my gosh, you have got to get this under control. And so he stepped in and was helping me manage, because in creative fields, you find that actually you spend 75% of your time doing the operations side of the business. And then you get 25% of your time for the creative. And that's not exactly the ratio that I am hoping for. So he started helping me, and it was like this huge weight lifted. And we learned pretty quickly on that dynamic worked really well for us.
And there was a point shortly before that where he had kind of been working with family and kind of been turned off to the idea. And
correct. Yeah, he had worked with family for a few years and the work experience was great, but it created a very tense relationship, and he decided to leave. And the reason we started working together was because he was kind of trying to find his next project and was helping me in the meantime, and was like, I'm never working with family again. And now we see that that's absolutely not the case. He's stuck with me.
I want to touch on something else that you said in that particular Substack. You said that the hardest part of working together isn't the business. It's that we feel the weight at the same time. When the stress is high, it's high for both of us simultaneously. There's no one coming home at the end of the day to offer a fresh perspective or a break from it. We're both in it all the time. Talk about that. What types of things have you done to kind of manage that a little bit as best you can? You can't manage that entirely because it's always going to exist, but what types of things do you do personally and the two of you collectively to kind of manage that a bit?
Yeah, I think that it usually takes one of us telling the other to kind of like snap out of it, because those tensions will spill over from work, and then we come home and we're like not being present with our kids, and the other one will call the other one out and say like, no, you got to like just step out. We can talk about this later. Like, okay, let's have dinner. Let's go to the park. Let's do those things. And then the other one has to go, okay, you're right. And Sid and I have a very clear relationship that allows for us to be pretty direct, and that works for us. Sometimes it's him telling me like, we need you, like a quick snap. We need you over here. And it just really happens when things are really stressful. I would say that we've been doing this for long enough that we understand that like rhythm of coming in and out of running a business and back home to the kids. And you're kind of always on for both when you're running a business and you are very family oriented. You're always kind of thinking about both. But that like reality check for each other really works.
Now, Shea, getting back to the business a little bit, I think something that a lot of people probably don't realize, and maybe you can confirm this, is that the situation with the Netflix show was obviously such a huge hit. It was long running, 3-4 years plus. That has an impact on your business in a positive way, and it also could adversely affect the business. In one sense, it's probably this incredible marketing opportunity and brand building opportunity, kind of puts the business on the map and puts you on the map to an extent. But also because Netflix probably has control over the casted clients and what you have to do and the different budgets, it probably puts some constraints on the business. Talk about that. I asked you before about the decision to kind of start the Substack. Talk about the decision to pause or end the Netflix show.
Sure.
How long was that kind of a part of the thought process? And then give everybody just some perspective on probably how hard it is to kind of come out of that and kind of reset in a way the business, I would imagine.
Sure. So I think that you're really hitting on it. And especially from an outside perspective, I'm impressed that you kind of caught on to some of the challenges potentially, because from the outside to many, it seems like, well, it's all good, right? And it was good in so many ways. We were able to, I just did a book signing this week for my cookbook, and I had people that were in town from the Netherlands that went out of their way on their vacation to come meet me because they were such a big fan and they had found me through the show. And many people were that same way. And that's incredible. And I still can't really wrap my head around that. And people always introduce us as like, as seen on the Netflix show. And it was a huge launching moment. Even though we had been in business for years, like that was like this turning point for our business. And I would say that then on the flip side, there were a few things that happened during the span of those seasons. And one of them was that I was pregnant, and I was pregnant until they filmed me until a few days before giving birth. And then they wanted to pick back up and film that last season just a couple of weeks after I had a baby. And that was exhausting physically, emotionally. It was hard on our family time-wise. And I think that there was like a point kind of where we were just like, I think that like this has been a really great run, but we need to kind of refocus our priorities. And so it was great. It was a great run. But you're right. We had a lot of casted clients. And those casted clients aren't the clients that we actually take on typically in our firm. They're smaller projects and homes. And I think on one hand, it was incredible so that we could show the value of design in all types of spaces, but it also didn't show what Studio McGee is. And so there was some confusion there, right? Of like, oh, what kind of, are they going to do my remodel of a small one room? No, we have to kind of clarify that when people are reaching out to us. So we haven't been filming for like 4 years now. I think it ended 4 years ago. And so we've spent those last 4 years actually having to kind of then rebuild that trajectory of luxury design firm, because when we were doing the show, we couldn't take on as many of those projects. So then we had to kind of reshift that focus back to custom homes. And now it's been a building time and a rebuild of both the business and the image. We got a lot of eyes. And then we had to make sure that we had built the system so that we didn't have a huge drop off, because we didn't want that drop off. That was my worst nightmare, was like that we were going to say, oh, this business is growing so well. And it was just because of this like blip on the map because of our Netflix seasons. We needed to build a business that was going to sustain long term.
Was there one or two things that you can point to that you feel like, hey, we implemented that and it really helped us avoid the pitfall that you were trying to avoid there?
I think that we had to just keep going, but also like not lean on saying like Netflix all the time. It was like reestablishing ourselves, I think. And that also meant that we needed to come up with more content on our own. So we could feed the eyes that were on us we were already doing like small webisodes, which is why we had gotten the show in the first place. But like we needed to go harder at regular content. And that's something that we had to build out, is like grow our team to be able to accommodate more content.
What about clarifying the business and the different business models that you are in as a company? And I guess for everybody listening, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, keep me honest here. You've got the design services business, which is what people got to know you for initially in many ways through the show. Then you've got the e-commerce, McGee Co. And then you also have your license deals and collabs with brands like Target and Kohler and others. Are there other parts of the business that I am missing?
Well, I guess the fourth would be the media component of it. So anytime I have books, or if there's a show or there's some sort of engagement on the media side. But you nailed the three. So we have our Studio McGee Inc. is the kind of parent company. And then we have the design services, the product brand, and then we have licensing. The product business, McGee Co., is the largest portion of the business.
Shea, do you feel like there are skill sets that you utilize kind of in all facets of the business, or do you feel like there are certain muscles that you have to flex more in different areas? Can you talk about that for a moment? Because in many ways, you are leading 3-4 different businesses that do very different things that may on the surface seem somewhat connected.
You're right. I think my role is very connected because my role is to be a creative visionary for all of these things. I creatively direct our design projects, and I'm reviewing all of those decisions for approvals. And then on the product side, I'm also setting the direction and feel for every single collection and product. And then same thing with our partners. I'm also setting the direction and feel of all of those, and I'm editing everything. So my role really, it changes a little bit from all these different things, but like it doesn't actually change that much. It's just the different projects require my creative vision. And then they all want me as the spokesperson, so the marketing arm of what we do. And I obviously apply that in different ways, but that is kind of the expectation of all of our partners and then also the businesses within our business.
Are there skills, are there things that you've had to kind of unlearn as the business has grown that maybe like being wired a certain way earlier on was really, really good, but now you've kind of had to unlearn something to thrive in the current context?
I don't think I've had to unlearn anything. I think I'm always just learning. It's more around building muscles. And the longer I do this, the stronger certain muscles get. In the very beginning, it was hard for me to trust and train because I wasn't sure. I'd never done that before. What does sharing a creative vision actually look like? And can I trust that people are going to carry that out? Well, I've seen through proof of that for the last 11, 12 years that it is absolutely possible. So when I have a creative director or a product designer that I'm working with, I know exactly how to work with them to collaborate and share what I'm envisioning. And that was a muscle that I've had to develop. Right now, I think that we're going through a big shift with the possibilities of AI tools I think it kind of feels like we're in the startup days again because we're trying to learn all of those things and there's a lot of questions around it. And that's one thing that I'm learning right now.
We can always be learning. We can always learn new things. I am curious, how have you evolved creatively over the period of time that you've been leading this company?
Definitely. I mean, I think that if I look to what I was designing when I first started versus what we're designing now, there's lots of growth. And I think there are some principles that have remained the same. But as a creative, like someone told me I had a wandering eye, and I kind of laughed at that.
Tell me more.
Assessment of me. I was like, oh, but then I realized, well, that's very true, because my eyes are kind of always just like looking for inspiration. And I love to dabble in gardening and cooking and design, and I'm traveling, and I'm always looking for inspiration when I'm even on a hike or just wherever I am at a restaurant. I'm always looking around me, and life experience leads to further development of those creative skills and tastes.
I've got to believe that your camera roll must be wild with ideas.
It is wild.
You're sourcing from everywhere.
I need some help organizing it.
You must come back into the office with just a million ideas in the camera roll from trips and travel and places you eat and everywhere you go.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today.
I am curious, do you have different types of creative tasks that you do in different places? Like for me, depending on the type of creative work that I'm doing, I kind of have to be in like a different place. There are certain things that I can do at my desk. There's certain things that I've got to do on a coffee shop. There's certain things I've got to do on a walk. Talk about that. Is that the same way for you?
Not necessarily. I think that I'm always on the go. And so I have to be really good at working on my phone. Like I don't lock myself into my desktop except for when I need to create, like in my focus work. Let's just say the one area is my sanctuary of like my desk and my big screen. That is where I can like visualize things. And that's really important. But I mean, I'm writing Substacks on a plane and reviewing design boards that were sent to me on my phone while waiting for a kid to come out from a lesson. It's just, that's how my life operates.
I call that working in the edges of time.
Oh, I like that.
I remember asking a country songwriter, this guy, Ashley Gorley. I call him the most famous person in country music that nobody's ever heard of because he is the songwriter for many of the biggest artists that we know. Carrie Underwood, Luke Bryan, Morgan Wallen, all of them. He's written over 75 number one hits.
Wow.
And I asked him I said, Ashley, where do great songs come from? How long do they take to come together? And he held up the iPhone and he said, Andrew, I have like something like 14,500 voice memos on my iPhone. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are these little particles that become hit songs, number one songs. He said, it might be an idea for the title. It might be an idea for a lyric. It might be something that I want the artist to do with the guitar. And sometimes it takes weeks and months to come together. And sometimes it takes 15, 20 minutes once I've got them. Can you relate to that?
Totally. I'm in a completely different industry, and that is exactly how it works for me. I think if I'm always mentally filing away things for later, just always gathering, not always in a constant state of like force it to happen, but if I'm always gathering when it is time to sit down, I have a lot of visuals to pull from in my mind. And sometimes it's not coming. So I'm sitting at my desk staring at a screen for hours. And then others, that same exact thing, I'm creating a set for a project that I'm working on or something. And it happens within 15 minutes. And it's just, I relate to that very, very much. But my version of those voice memos is screenshots and notes in my phone, written notes.
Screenshots and notes from your phone. I can relate. I would say like that my desktop probably looks a lot like yours did when Sid got a little bit concerned.
Yep.
And then I've gotten a little bit better with folders in different places. But for me, it's all about finding them in the voice memos and then finding the screenshots.
Yes.
That's always the biggest challenge. I've got sitting here what now I'm calling the Shea McGee trilogy.
Look at that. Thank you.
I can't imagine it's just going to stop at 3. I've got to believe there's more coming down
There's
the pipe.
another
But for
one
now,
in the pipeline. Yep.
for now, it's a trilogy. And the latest is just this absolutely beautiful book, Around the Table.
Thank you.
You tell me, Shea, like, okay, I feel like a cookbook is not even doing it justice.
No.
It's like a book about cooking, entertaining, hospitality, connecting people. Take me through the origin story of this beautiful book, Around the Table.
Yeah, so I really wanted to create what I'll call a coffee table cookbook. And
okay, I'm tracking.
if we're going to get into the nitty gritty, I was under a contract for a few books. And I was like, these projects take years. I cannot do another design book yet. I have a few projects that are going to take a few years, and I'm going to do a design book again, I promise. But I have another book that I want to write in the meantime. And I'm like, I am not going to just come out of the gate with it like, here she is with a cookbook. No, if I'm going to do this, I want it to be so inspirational on the entertaining side as much as the food side. I love food. In fact, you probably would have guessed early on that maybe I would have gone into food before design because I was around it a lot growing up and it was a big part of our family. My dad grew up in the South on a farm and my grandma was that Southern cook that just knew how to bring people together. And she was working in the kitchen all day for that dinner where we would come to at night. And I loved those summers there. And I had this kind of progression of experience from only knowing how to like bake and make salads. And then I had a husband who would eat like burgers plain and was not interested in anything. And we lived in Southern California and I was like, oh my gosh, we got to do something here. And so I just started cooking and over the years have developed that skill and had the privilege of being able to travel for all of these cool design projects that I do and travel and gather inspiration for not only my design projects and products, but also food. And that is where the book idea came from. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's organized by season. So we have 4 seasons, and then within each season, there are multiple tablescapes, so scenes or settings. And within each of those is a full menu. So you're getting like 90 something recipes, but they're organized by season and menu. So if you're like, I am hosting a birthday party, or I'm hosting a baby shower, or I'm doing soup night at my house, like I've given you everything you need, because that's half the battle sometimes is figuring out like what pairs well together when you're entertaining. And I just wanted it to be like a feast for the eyes. And it is so, you're right. I am so excited by how it's turned out. And the coolest thing has been, it's only been out for a week and I have been tagged dozens, hundreds of times with people showing me that they're like getting people together, that they're like trying these recipes out in their backyard, or they're getting their kids in the kitchen with them. And like, that's what it's all about. Like when you move into a new home or you kind of freshen up a space, what's one of the first things you do? You celebrate with a meal. And so it's like just a natural extension of what I love.
It is so cool. I mean, it literally, like I said moments ago, like the first time I held it, I said to myself, like, I don't even think a cookbook, like I said, a cookbook just doesn't do it justice. To me, the next thought I had, and I shared this idea with my wife, I said, I'm going to buy a bunch of these books and I'm just going to give them to families and friends in our life. Because to me, that's what's most inspiring about this book, that it's really a book about like connection in my mind. Like when you like distill it all down. But you mentioned 90 recipes. Is that 90 recipes?
Yeah. So there's an exclusive edition to Target that takes you to like 100. And I did Small Bites menu for them, but it's like 90, 96.
So at least 90 plus recipes. Yeah. I am curious. When I asked Allison Ellsworth, who started the company Poppy, about how she created Poppy, and she did it in her kitchen, she told me, I said, how many tries to get the first version of Poppy? She said, Andrew, that's been like 3,000 tries.
Yeah.
So take people behind the scenes. How long does it take you to come up with a working recipe for one of these items?
Sure. So the process for development of a cookbook usually involves a recipe developer and a tester. And in my case, I'm not a professionally trained chef, but I had a lot of recipes that I already made that needed to be finessed and tested for the public. And so how I went about this book was I went through and I said, okay, what are all the occasions that I'm hosting for kind of on a regular basis? And what are the traditions that I have with my family year after year that I want to bring into this? And so that kind of set the framework. And on McGee Co, with our catalogs that we send out, we include recipes in those. So I already had this fantastic relationship to develop these recipes for that. And Katie and I just got to cooking. So we would cook and then she would send me the finessed version of like my vision. And then I would test those and make edits and test it again. And so everything got tested multiple times. And I didn't do this during work hours. I have a business to run. I have design projects and products that need to be reviewed. And so I did this on nights and weekends. And it was a true labor of love. It was so many more hours than my design book, so many more hours than my first book about founding our business. But I absolutely loved the process. I brought my team in to shoot all of these tablescapes and it was like magic. The energy of us like just creating these scenes. It was like, okay, Shea, we want a backyard garden scene. Okay, we find the perfect location, we set it up, and then we got to eat all the food after we would shoot it. And so it was so fun. We shot through the year and it was an absolute blast. I loved it.
I mean, you're talking about so much there and such a labor of love. And I mean, a lot of what you just covered there was recipe development, but then you started to allude to really like the photography and the videography and everything that goes into it. I mean,
I chose the most complicated format ever for a cookbook because I didn't want to just shoot the food. I wanted to shoot these scenes. So I really did like a design book and a cookbook together.
I'm flipping through it here. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, I can't say this enough, Shea. What was the most surprising part of the whole process for you? Like, what was something that going into the process, you felt like you had kind of one perspective and it really changed?
Honestly, I just loved the process. I didn't really there wasn't anything that was a major surprise, except for that I decided to shoot for the year. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to capture the light of the season. Like if we're in summer, it needs to feel like summer. Same thing with winter, whatever the season was. So by the end, I was like, why did you do this to yourself? Like it was like a marathon. We just kept shooting and shooting and shooting. And typically with cookbooks, they're shooting like over the course of like a couple of weeks or something. No, I did it was just like a marathon.
And they're probably like in a studio kitchen.
Well,
and it's on a countertop.
It's a little bit more
all over the place.
Yeah, so we were all over the place. So and all of my team, we all have we all love creating so much. And so it just kept and what if we did this? And what if we did this? And it just, it built on itself, but I really enjoyed it. I would say that the thing that surprised me was probably the amount of organization that is required to go into a cookbook. You have to create these matrices where you organize all the ingredients to then do the appendix of all of that's a lot. That is complicated work. It is not just let's throw a recipe out there. No, it's so much more than that. And I've done this 3 times and I always underestimate the phase of editing because you think you're done, you hand it over, and then there's 20 back and forths of getting it perfect for print.
Do you identify with kind of the idea of perfectionism? I'm guessing that there's some perfectionism. I mean, like me, with me, it's very hard to let things go.
Yeah.
When we get ready to release an episode, and we make very little edits in post-production. I mean, what listeners hear from these conversations is basically what we've recorded. But I am constantly challenging myself and saying we could do this, we could do that, we could have done that. Or maybe it's just more retrospective. for the next 3 days after this conversation, I'll be thinking about things. I wish I would have asked Shea that. I wish I would have asked her that. Talk about your relationship with perfectionism and the details, because I mean, your whole world is details and trying to get things perfect. How do you deal with that?
My whole world is details, and I'm thinking about them all of the time. I think that I'm more a details during the process kind of person. And then like once it's done, I have gotten to the point where I've like overanalyzed every single angle and detail that could be analyzed. So I'm pretty good at being able to like turn it in, and then I get nervous that I want people to love it. I want there to be a good response. And so I get really anxious about that. But by the time that end like is in sight, I'm like, I have done all the thinking I can do. I don't know what's left to give. I have got it. But I also have to tell myself always like, there's going to be a comment. There's going to be a something. There's going to be an error found. Like it's there, of course. So I have to prep myself. I have to prep myself always for that. But I'm pretty good at releasing once it's out.
I don't know if you're a fan of ice skating or figure skating, but Tara Lipinski, who's an Olympic gold medal winning figure skater, she told me, she's a self-proclaimed perfectionist. And she said to me, Andrew, she said, no matter how many times I would practice, rehearse a skating program, there comes a point where you just have to skate away from the boards to center ice and go do it. And she kind of had that moment, like that. She had that separation between the boards and the skate to center ice where she was like, this is it. Do you have a mental or like a physical thing that you do where you to try and officially kind of disconnect and kind of let the boat off the dock?
I wish I did. I think that I relate to that very much, where like I'm so perfectionistic during the process and I'm very hard on myself, and I review things in my mind over and over again. But then once it's out there, I think maybe it's a learned skill and it's a coping skill because I've had to learn it, because I think that I've spent a lot of time in my life getting very weighed down by that weight of like did I do everything? Is that the best? What if the response isn't good? And I kind of had to teach myself to lock out, because my world is so our world is so internet focused. It actually is like a physical locking out of things. Because if I can lock myself out of social media and like just internet talking heads for a second, I am able to disconnect. I just need to get some fresh air. It's like truly fresh air is for me.
It's truly like stepping outside.
I just have to step outside, put the phone down, step away from my desk and get some fresh air. And I think that's the thing that for me is the cue. Like, okay, time to let go.
Fascinating. I'm thinking also about a conversation I had with a former Major League catcher. And he has this interesting dynamic where if you think about Major League catchers, they are, or a catcher, it isn't in any level of the sport, a catcher is behind the plate, calling the pitches, catching the pitches, essentially has this deep working relationship with the pitcher. And then they also have to go and they have to bat when their team is batting. And he said one of the biggest challenges that I had was not letting what was going on in my world as a catcher when I was behind the plate affect me when I was a hitter standing at the plate trying to hit. And fortunately, he said, I had this 14-second process. It takes me about 14 seconds to take the shin guards, the chest protector, the mask and the helmet off that I wear when I'm catching behind the plate, and put the batting helmet, batting gloves, and the bat in my hands to bat. And whatever was happening when I was a catcher gets totally released. If I called the wrong pitch, my pitcher just gave up a home run, that gets released, and now I'm a hitter. And then similarly, whatever happens when I'm at the plate, if I've struck out 3 times today, I'm not letting it, or I'm trying my best to not let it affect me, because that's going to impact how I call the game as a catcher and how I play on defense. So all of us, and no matter what we're doing, like we have like all these different contexts that we're switching from. You talked about that social media there and just stepping outside. I mean, what a beautiful idea, right? It's something as simple as just stepping outside, getting fresh air is really that cue that can be so helpful.
Yes, agreed.
Shea, you always are so ambitious, and you don't strike me as the type of person who says, like, when I get here, like, I'm good. I'm just going to stop when I get to that phase of the journey. I feel like somebody like you constantly has ambitions and new ideas and challenges. When you think about whatever some of the big things that you want to accomplish that still lie ahead, you don't have to share what they are, but if you think about some of the big things that you still want to accomplish, what do you think is the biggest challenge that would impede you from getting there? What's the biggest challenge that you have to overcome to achieve whatever those ambitions are?
I think my problem is the opposite in that I will put my head down and grind until the end of time. Like that is my personality. When I was an intern in college, my boss nicknamed me the machine because I would just like lock in. I can just lock in. And I think that's the problem for me is like, I need to be told or reminded to like, take a deep breath and just kind of like enjoy because I'll just keep focused. And I do have a lot of ambition, but so Sid says, I'm happy because we're both this way, happy, but rarely satisfied. Okay. And I think that's a good way to describe it. Like I am happy in the moment, but I am rarely satisfied. Like that up until this point, what I've accomplished is like all I want to accomplish. So I'm just going to keep going forward.
That is honestly one of the most common, not everybody puts it that way. I think that's a great way of putting it. You said it was
happy, but rarely satisfied. Yeah.
Happy, but not satisfied. And I think that is probably one of the common themes that I have seen throughout the more than 250 conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, Broadway stars, is this idea of some level of a high degree of happiness and contentment and achievement, but never satisfied. Always wanting to do a little bit more. Like, I don't see like Taylor Swift just sitting there saying, you know what, like that was a great tour. I'm glad that we did the Eras tour. Like,
see ya. Yeah.
We're good. Right. Like, I don't see that happening. And I don't find that in high performers. I think what makes you a high performer, what's enabled you to achieve all the things that you've achieved so far and will enable you to achieve all the things in the future that you will, is that you do find that happiness that is well-deserved, but you're not satisfied. You constantly want to push it a little further.
Yeah. There's always like that. But what if we did this? Or should we try this? Oh, that would be cool. I just think that I'm kind of just always thinking about what creative endeavor or how we could improve. It's hard for me to turn that off. And that's served me really well, but it also means I need to remind myself and be reminded like, okay, slow down for a second. Just enjoy what's happening right in front of you. And that's something that I'm always working on.
Shea, as we get ready to wrap up our conversation, last time we talked about this ability that you have to see the potential in things that others don't see. And I think I don't even want to call it a cookbook because like I said, it's so much more than a cookbook, but this book, Around the Table, is another shining example of that. I mean, like nobody said like, this is exactly what we need, but you created it. And
Thank you.
This is a book that the world needs. If you had to distill it down to like its most basic form, like why do you have this ability to see potential in things that others don't see?
I think that it was a God-given gift that I was lucky enough to realize and put additional work into. And I think that there's so many different ways to look at creative gifts, but I've had to work really hard, but lots of people work really hard. And I think that I was given a few unique gifts that worked harmoniously together. And yeah, I think that's the best answer I can give there.
Shea, it's a beautiful answer. And the world is just so grateful that you've connected all these dots and you've taken all these talents and put them together in such an incredible way as you have throughout your career. I'm going to go back to my baseball analogy. Even with all that you've accomplished, I still feel like you're in just like the second or third inning of the 9-inning game. I mean, there is so much left to accomplish, and I know you chase big ambitions all the time. It has been so much fun reconnecting with you, talking about everything that's happened over the last 3 years since our last conversation. So much goodness at Studio McGee and across all of your businesses. And then this book, as I mentioned, Around the Table. What an incredible gift to the universe. Thank you so much, Shea. I'm going to recertify you as a tarp puller, forever a member of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family, leading by example, worrying about the details, lifting other people up. There's no task beneath you. You live the Everybody Pulls the Tarp mindset, Shea, as good as anybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Shea. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you're like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.